This trip to Ulvetanna in Queensland, Antarctica, is basically the ultimate expedition. You know, it's the most perfect mountain. It's a new route, off the hook in terms of, you know, the aesthetic beauty and the technical difficulty and the remote, demanding nature. The film's going to be called The Last Great Climb, and that pretty much sums it up. Where are we going to go next? Ulvetanna was put on the map by a big Norwegian expedition led by a guy called Ulvetanna in '94, I think it was. And he found out about these incredible mountains from the archives of the Norwegian Polar Institute. They'd kind of been forgotten. And then he put together this amazing expedition where they went out there, they climbed Ulvetanna and a bunch of other mountains in the region. And then a couple of years later, they released a beautiful book and kind of introduced the world to these otherworldly mountains. Most people never noticed. Many people haven't seen the book, and I first saw it in 1997, and I remember thinking, wow, is that Earth? It really is otherworldly. And I thought, one day, I want to go there. And in 1997, I'd never climbed a big wall. So, you know, big wall climbing is a very specialist type of climbing. It's just massive cliffs more than 1,000 meters high. And I thought, one day, I want to go there. And then in 2012, the opportunity came, well, it didn't come to me. I made the opportunity to go there. And then at the start of 2013, we went and climbed that amazing mountain. Obviously, an expedition to Antarctica is extremely demanding in many ways, not least of all on the gear, on the equipment that you take in. Berghaus, who sponsored the expedition and I've been working with for years, worked closely with me to develop the best possible kit for the environment. What's slightly unusual about what we were doing is, obviously it has the potential to be extremely cold in Antarctica, but most of the stuff that goes on in Antarctica, or extreme cold in general, is not very technical. You know, for example, Everest it's really walking, it's not climbing. It's extremely cold, you've got the altitude issues, but it's not very technical. Same as skiing to the South Pole, you'll experience ridiculously cold temperatures, but you're kind of skiing and going across flats. What we're doing is highly involved vertical climbing of the highest standard in this crazy environment. So we wanted to develop kit that was good in extreme cold, but that was also suitable for technical activity. So what that essentially means with the large down equipment is it needs to be fitted. Your typical down suit, for example, is like, you know, it's like a Michelin man suit. It's really bulbous. You can hardly see your feet. Whereas if you're doing difficult climbing, you really need to be able to see your feet. That's one of the keys to all climbing is your feet. So we developed some well-fitted stuff. Some of the other demands are, you know, normally I would opt for lightweight kit, but some of the advice I got for an Antarctic expedition is you need to err on the durable side rather than the lightweight side. Lightweight's good and well if you're in a race or you're out for the day, but if you're somewhere extreme for weeks on end, I'd rather it was a little bit heavier but wasn't going to fail. So we went to a fairly in-depth level testing different fabrics, different technologies. One of the things we did, which is quite simple, we had 6 identical soft shell jackets with a single variation in each one. Some would be a slightly different cut, some would have venting panels, some wouldn't, some would have a different fabric. So you've only got one variable, so you can compare them all to each other. And we had temperature sensors all over us and a thermal imaging camera. And it was invaluable, really, and that data then came back. We crunched it, we body mapped everything, where you need extra heat, where you lose heat, where you want to lose heat, where you don't want to. Correlated all that data, and then the kit that we took to Antarctica, which was third prototype, you know, it isn't just opinion-based, there's a little bit of data to back it up, which is good, it's fun to be a part of. Climbing in Antarctica is another thing. It's hard to describe the remote, the harsh, the fear, the commitment involved in going to a remote part of Antarctica. It didn't really dawn on me until we got the green light for the expedition just what a major undertaking it is. And although I'm a professional climber, honestly, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to organise an expedition or I didn't. So it's also hugely expensive. To contextualise, there's no resupplies. 6 guys for 6 weeks in the most extreme environment you can imagine. If you haven't got it with you when you arrive, you're not going to get it. If you forget something or if you run out of something, there is no resupplies, there's nowhere to go. Once you get on the wall, there's no one coming to help you. If something happens, if you have an accident, if the weather hits you and you're not ready, you're on your own. Multiple times on the expedition, the thought ran through my head, we are a long way from home. We're so far from home, and you feel it. You feel it's scary. And, half the battle of an expedition is won in the preparation. You can be defeated before you leave home if you get it wrong. Conversely, if you get it right, you are halfway to success. But there's a lot to it. It took months. We had 1,700 kilos of kit, including fuel and food in base camp. That's a lot of stuff, including all the film kit, the climbing kit, and everything else. And every gram of that I had accounted for and calculated whether or not we need it. In the end, we didn't use it all, but a lot of it's spares. And the whole point, we had spare tents, we had spare ropes. The whole point of a spare is that ideally you won't use it. But you've got to be prepared for -50 and 100-mile-an-hour winds. From the research I did, it's a realistic possibility that you could experience 100-mile-an-hour winds and temperatures of -50. And camping in those conditions you got to be ready for it. Ulvetanna is, in my opinion, the most amazing mountain in the world. It's not high altitude. It's only 3,000 meters to the summit. But it's a rocket ship of a mountain. It's the wolf's tooth. It's just a prodigious granite fang sticking up out of the Antarctic ice cap. It's the kind of mountain that a little kid would draw. And there's no easy way up it. Every route is difficult. It's without question the most difficult peak to climb in Antarctica. The northeast ridge, the route we did, is not only the biggest, but the most beautiful line on the mountain. Sometimes people ask, do you pick these aesthetic lines because they look good in film? No, we pick these aesthetic lines because as a climber, they're the most compelling ones. This particular route, you don't have to be a climber to see where it goes. It's the knife edge ridge that goes all the way up the mountain. There's an initial buttress, which is bigger than any cliff in Britain. It's 1,000 feet high, 300 meters high, which is just the footstool. And then there's about 400 meters of lower angle stuff that leads to this incredible feature we call the dinosaur spine. Just looks like the back of a diplodocus. A ridge about 1 meter wide, carved out of granite, 45 degrees, 400 meters long, with a 500 meter drop on each side. It's just remarkable. It's like walking the plank into outer space, just up this incredible ridge. And then that led to a big ledge. The nice thing about making a first ascent on a remote mountain is you get to name all the features. So the dinosaur spine led to the Plateau of Great Expectations. And then there's a 500 meter high head wall, which is massive. To put that into perspective, the largest building in Britain, the Shard, is 309 meters high. So, it's almost twice as big as the Shard. And that's just the head wall. And that was the hard part of the climb. There was a big roof in the middle of it. It was very demanding. Conditions deteriorated quite significantly towards the summit. And when we finally got to the summit, by the skin of our teeth, we topped out in, with wind chill, it was -35 on the summit. And we were very close to the limit. But everyone got down and we all got home in one piece. So no injuries, full success, good trip. I've worked a lot in television and film in the last 10 years, and people don't realise quite how much effort goes into making, a pretty picture. High production value film, it's not like you just bring a camera along and film what's happening. It just doesn't work like that. If you want to come back with the kind of production values that we as television viewers are used to, there's a lot involved. You know, without going into too many details, essentially you've got loads more kit and everything takes loads more time. I would say it more than doubles the expense, complication and difficulty of an expedition. The way Alastair and I have been working together on these trips, it is incredibly lightweight and stripped down to the very bare essentials, and it's still double the effort. The work of doing television, man, it's 10 times the effort. And those guys, the way that's done, you just couldn't do an extreme expedition in that style. It's really hard work. It's also a privilege to come back with, you know, I personally feel the stuff that Alastair and I are doing, and I must name check the other guys, Sean Leary, Jason Pickles, Dave Reeves and Chris Raybone, is the best. There's a couple of other people doing stuff of that quality, but you know, it's not really better. It's as good as anyone has ever captured in the field, and that's a privilege. But it comes at a price. You know, it's a lot of work, and there's a certain compromise within. You know, it's no longer pure adventure for adventure's sake. There is very much we're trying to capture it. We're not just there to climb a mountain and have a big adventure. We're there to do that and then come back and share that. And it does fundamentally change it. However, and at the time, it can be quite frustrating. However, when you get back and you know, first of all, you see the photos and then you start seeing the raw footage and then you start seeing sections of the film and then finally when Alastair finishes the movie, it's, you know, it's a different thing. It's amazing to be able to share it. And bluntly, on an expedition to Antarctica, that's, you know, it's a 6-figure expedition, unless you're loaded, you're not going there unless you come back with something of value. And so what's a bit different with Antarctica is you kind of have to come back with something like that. Other places you choose to make the film. You could have just paid for it out of your own pocket, but unless you've got some serious reserves, Antarctica is kind of beyond reach of mere mortals. But it's looking good, and looking forward to seeing the final cut.